Hi everyone. Usually on the first video of the new year, I'd be talking about the 5 things to expect in immigration for the remainder of the year. That was a very popular video that we had last year, and we're going to do it again. However, since we're going to have a new president in the US in a few short weeks, and because we already know his stance towards immigration is much more positive than the past administration, I think I'm going to save that until after he is inaugurated and we hear more from him and see what more he says or does. Today, I'm going to talk about what he promised to do in his campaign, what other political leaders are asking for him to change, and what I think can and should be changed as soon as he gets into office. My name is Mejer. I'm an immigrant from Chile as well as an immigration attorney. When I was a child, my parents paid an attorney to get us legal status. That attorney took our money and didn't do anything. I had to figure out, me and my family had to figure out how to work the immigration system, get ourselves a green card, and then get citizenship. And that after living here without legal status for almost 10 years. Today, I've become a US citizen, and now I want to help you do the same thing. My goal is to make your life better because you worked with us. If you have an immigration issue, call us. We'll see if we're a good fit. We won't take your money if we can't help you. Like I said earlier, today I'm going to review the 9 things President-elect Biden promised in his campaign about immigration changes that he's going to make, and I want to also share how likely it is that I think he'll be able to effect those 9 changes. There is a runoff election tomorrow in Georgia, and that will almost certainly impact what Biden can do. If Republicans retain power, it is less likely that Biden will be able to make as many of the changes as he hopes to, because that is not appealing to many conservatives and GOP supporters. GOP is a nickname for the Republican Party, the Grand Old Party. If the Democrats win, it is more likely that Biden will have the support needed to make any changes. So today, the Senate, there's 50 GOP senators, 4 Democratic senators, and in Georgia, there's a runoff for 2 seats. Now, because if the Democrats win, it would be 50-50, the vice president-elect, Kamala Harris, she would be the 51st senator to break a tie, in which case the Democrats would have a majority. If the GOP gets 1 or 2, then they retain the majority that they presently have. So, getting right to it, 9 changes Biden promised on immigration. Number 1, he would immediately reverse the family separation policy that is currently in place. Since this is a policy that doesn't require Senate approval, this is something a new president will be able to change and do so pretty much immediately. 2, end Trump's asylum policies. Throughout the Trump administration, the number of visas available to those seeking asylum has been drastically reduced. This administration has put more roadblocks in place for those seeking asylum than any other. For example, the remain in Mexico requirement. When one is applying coming from outside the US, going through Mexico, goes to the border, asks for asylum, and the Customs Border Patrol tell them, oh, you got to stay in Mexico while your case gets adjudicated. He has also worked with countries outside of the US, like Mexico, Guatemala, Nicaragua, El Salvador, to help to enforce these policies by threatening economic sanctions if they didn't keep asylum seekers from coming to the US. And he offered financial incentives for those countries that did keep asylum seekers from coming to the US. Because of that, many asylum seekers found themselves worse off than before they tried to obtain asylum. To add to this, on August 1st, 2020, a new policy went into effect for asylum seekers regarding work authorizations, and other policies have since been adopted to increase interviews for derivative beneficiaries. What do I think Biden will do? Well, if policies are in place that don't need congressional approval, Biden will almost certainly implement them. But he will need to do so judiciously. This means if there's a sudden rush of tens of thousands of people at the border, especially with COVID and the current economic situation in the US, he would be roundly criticized for opening the borders. I don't think he's going to do that. I also don't think he should worry about criticism because, frankly, no matter what he's going to do, he's going to be criticized. However, there are some things he could implement immediately that wouldn't hurt the US further and would help those seeking asylum. Those include he could allow for more visas for asylum seekers. He could take away the requirement that immigration judges, their raises, meaning their pay and their job security, are based on the number of denials they issue. He could change immigration judges to those who are more pro-immigrant and remove those who have denial rates of a certain percentage, like 90%. So he could hire more judges, but he could also replace those that clearly have a bias and are really not doing a good job in adjudicating petitions. It shouldn't be that, if you're in Atlanta, Georgia, you have 95% chance that you're going to lose. But if you're in California, maybe you have 60% that you're going to win. I'm exaggerating. I'm making those numbers in California and in Atlanta, but Georgia court is the worst in the nation. It shouldn't be that big a difference. A case, whether you file it in Georgia or you file it in Florida, New York, or California, should not be such a huge difference. It shouldn't, the variable should not be who the judge is. It should be what is the law and what are their facts. And in most circumstances, judges should come to the same or similar decision, but we know that's not the case. Biden could create a task force to work with human rights groups to change policies that have so negatively impacted asylum seekers. He could implement economic sanctions for those countries with human rights violations. He could remove the immigration ban towards those from Muslim countries. He could increase the number of refugees allowed. He could increase both immigration judge numbers as well as increased immigration officers and USCIS employees to speed up processing times. The problem with most recent immigration judges is that they have so little to no immigration experience. They're hired just based on their political bias, not on qualifications. He should refocus hiring judges with relevant experience. The law shouldn't be about what you personally think. It should be applying the law to facts and coming with a thought out decision. We need to get back to that. He could decrease unnecessary interviews that seem designed only to delay the process. He could remove the restrictions on asylum seekers being able to apply for work authorization. Remember, now it's a full year after the application is received by USCIS. It used to be 150 days. He could work to reestablish the U.S. as a welcoming place that is made better by the immigrants we accept. And he could create an amnesty program. We talked about this in another video, which I'll link here below. So 3. Let's move on to the third thing. Remember, so 9 things. The first one was, family separation. Secondly was end Trump's policies on asylum. And the third thing he said he would do is end prolonged detention and increase case management. I think very few people would say that prolonged detention of immigrants is helpful to the U.S. It increases costs, it increases COVID cases, and in some instances has garnered human rights violations from the UN and others. There is a new policy that wants to take away the right to work while awaiting deportation. I also discussed that previously in a different video, but I think the US can only be helped by people working legally while in the US. We get their taxes, they're gainfully employed, and the monies they earn are reinvested in the communities in which they live. To increase case management, more workers will need to be hired or roles modified within already existing employees. This isn't a bad thing and probably could be implemented relatively easily throughout USCIS. Number 4, reverse the public charge rule. The courts have already stopped the public charge rule from being applied both domestically in the US and also abroad outside of the US. Since it is not a law that has been enacted, it would be easy for it to be removed from USCIS policy. Remember that it has almost always been a requirement that immigrants are able to support themselves or they have a sponsor who can in order to enter the US. What the Trump administration did was define what a public charge rule was. not a problem in itself. The rule should continue. But what the Trump administration did is reduce immigration unless people made a certain amount, and increased the subjective decision-making process of USCIS officers. And that is never a good idea. 5, end the national emergency that is taking money from the Department of Defense to build a wall. Look, we know that Trump has only built 5 miles of a wall since he got into office. And what I mean by that is 5 new miles that haven't already been there. He's replaced a lot of the wall with bigger, steeper, what have you, but only 5 miles of new where there wasn't wall in the past. We also know that Russia hacked into the US government for months without the Trump administration knowing or protecting US interests or citizens. And then after they knew, they didn't seem to do much to stop it, or didn't seem to care much. In fact, they tried to blame China. I think it would be much more important for the Department of Defense to fight cyber and other threats than it is to build a wall. And I hope that the majority of Americans would agree with that, including Republicans. Look, I am not against a wall per se. What's important, however, is not building a wall. What's important is border security. And there's a variety of, you need people, you need technology, and sometimes you need assets like a wall. However, you're not going to put a wall on a river. You're not going to put a wall on the sea. So just building the wall in and of itself will not make us safe. We need increased border security. And the reality is, after the past 12 years, our border, certainly on the south, is much more secure than it's ever been before. Our border on the north, not so much. Number 6, protect DACA holders, aka the Dreamers. As I spoke about in another video, there is ongoing litigation about DACA in Texas. There was a hearing December 22nd, 2020. We still don't have a decision. There has been an effort for almost 2 decades now to pass a bill through Congress and Senate that both parties agree in order to give legal status to those who came here as children. Well, I would love to see President Biden do something to allow for this. Unless it's approved by the House and the Senate, there's probably going to continue to be legal fights about DACA. If the Republicans remain in power in the Senate, I don't know whether anything will pass, but if it is, it likely will only be for DACA and for TPS, and I'll talk about TPS later on. Even if the Democrats gain power in the Senate, the Republicans are still going to fight any of these changes. Now, whether they're going to be successful or not, what is Biden going to prioritize in the time that he has? Will immigration be one of those issues, given COVID, the economy, and the variety of challenges that we're facing? Is he going to prioritize immigration? I don't know, but I sure hope he does. However, President Biden could implement something while strictly following the Administrative Procedures Act so that any legal fights would be less likely to prevail. So going back for the past 3 years, since September 15th, 2017, when Trump ended DACA by memo, the legal fight, which went all the way up to the Supreme Court, has been about, can Trump do what he did? Meaning, can Trump eliminate DACA the way that he did it? The case in Texas is a different argument. The case in Texas says, did Obama create the program the way he should have? And he didn't. So Trump has been losing across the board on the issue of DACA because of the way that he eliminated it. And the Supreme Court said, hey, the Administrative Procedures Act needs to be followed for DACA cases. That means you have to follow the rule-making process. You need a proposal, you need a comment period, people review it, make comments, and then the agency has to review it, issue final rules. That's what the Administrative Procedures Act requires. Obama did not do that when he created DACA, and that's why the Texas case would be successful. However, President Biden, once he's inaugurated, could modify DACA, review DACA, or just keep it the same or change it, because it was initially for a look back period of 5 years. meaning it was implemented in 2012 for people that were in the US before 2007, and here we are in 2020 with the same, now it's 13 years instead of 5 years. Put all that issue aside, he could reissue DACA according to the rulemaking process that the Supreme Court has said is allowable. So if Trump can remove DACA if he follows the right process, it logically follows that another president could create a program like DACA if they also follow the right process. Right now, the Supreme Court has a majority of conservative justices, 6-3 that are more, let's say, more liberal. If DACA gets the Supreme Court right now, the way that it is, without Biden making any changes to it, I don't like our chances. We'll be watching this closely and let you know when anything arises that you need to know about. Number 7. So the 7th thing that Biden promised to do while in his campaign, and that's rescind the Muslim ban. I spoke about this before when I was discussing asylum. Frankly, refusing entry to anyone because of their religion or the majority religion in the country they come from seems anti-American. Isn't what this country was founded on religious freedom? President-elect Biden has always been opposed to those who have criminal pasts being allowed to immigrate to the US. That is not limited to just people from predominantly Muslim countries. It's across the board. Our office fully supports legal immigration, and if you are eligible, we want you to be welcomed with open arms. We hope that this disgraceful ban is lifted ASAP. Number 8, order an immediate review of TPS. I also discussed this before. President Trump has removed protection for those with TPS from a variety of countries. Some have already lost their protection and others will later this month. I hope that President Biden changes that immediately. The US has always been a welcoming, safe place for those who are not safe in their own countries, and it should remain so. Along with that, I would like to see President Biden develop a plan for granting permanent status to those who have TPS. Similar to DACA, except TPS, temporary protective status, is a law, not a regulation. It wasn't created by presidential fiat like DACA was. TPS was a bill that was proposed and approved in the House of Representatives and the Senate and signed by the president. Many TPS holders have lived in the country for 15 or 20 years, and it seems unfortunate that their life could be upended by the whims of a political party or person trying to get more votes. We should be better than that in the US, and we need to show everyone that we are. 9, ensure Customs and ICE abide by professional standards and are immediately held accountable for inhumane treatment. I'm shocked, frankly, that this even needs to be said. It does feel like we've seen a reduction in civility across the board. Everywhere in the US during the Trump administration, people have been less civil to each other. Our hope is that changes, that we all become kinder, that we recognize the humanity in everyone and we treat each other respectfully. That may be a dream, but it shouldn't be. So that is what President-elect Biden said he would change in immigration during his campaign, those 9 things, and how I think it will play out. I think we can all agree that the immigration system in the US needs a massive overhaul. To change it, we need people on both sides of the aisle. That means Democrats and Republicans agreeing to make changes. That means more people and ultimately a lot more money put towards changing the current system. With the country grappling with thousands of deaths a day from COVID, even though we have a vaccine, there is much that is going to have to be considered in every area of our nation and government before drastic change can happen. Do we want it to happen? Absolutely. We would rejoice with everyone if legal immigration were easier for our clients and all who want to enter the US. Do I think it will happen overnight or even in the next 4 years? I think there will be small positive changes, but I think it unlikely that the entire system will be dramatically different 4 years from now. It isn't that Trump has changed immigration laws. He hasn't, but the mentality has completely changed. Immigration as a whole, and there's over 7 agencies that are involved in immigration. The mentality used to be, how can I help you achieve your immigrant goals, to how can I deny your goals and aspirations for any reason possible. So we need the mindset to change again, but we also need simple fixes. Border security, we can all agree as to that. Fix the backlogs. Over 1 million cases in immigration courts, people waiting for decades for visas. Clean up that process. Simplify the method to legally enter the U.S. Future flow of immigrants. So once we have a path for legal status for the undocumented immigrants, they go for that. You've now fixed the illegal immigrants you have here today. You implement border security that keeps people from illegally entering the United States. Third, you need to address future flow. What immigrants do we want to come in the future? For agriculture, high tech, doctors, nurses. What immigrants do we want? Skilled labor and unskilled labor. What does that look like for people that want to come here, work for a period of time, but may not want to live here permanently? If they want to come in, give them the opportunity to stay as long as they meet certain criteria. Future flow of immigration. And we need a independent judiciary. I think those are the 4 pillars for reform. Underneath those 4 is a lot of what we have discussed today. Will all that happen? I think it should. But will it? I am hopeful and will remain hopeful. But I do think there's going to be small positive changes. I do think the mentality is going to change. And depending on what the election is, if the Democrats win and if President Biden puts immigration as a priority, and he should, because I know Trump has made it a priority the past 4 years, we should get meaningful reform. If there are changes, you'll hear about it from me. Please like and share this video if you found it helpful. If you'd like to hear more about a certain topic, let us know in the comments below. Until next time, stay healthy and be well.